The scion of a wealthy family was reborn. After regaining consciousness, he immediately ordered the hospital to transfuse all the rare panda blood to his beloved, who was injured in a car accident, neglecting me who was also hit in his previous life. He felt so guilty for hitting me that he devoted all his resources to me. As a result, his beloved died from loss of blood. He resented me. If it weren't for you, Xan would have been able to give birth to our baby soon, this time. Seeing him divert all the blood supplies, I couldn't help but laugh. After all, he didn't know that the child his beloved was carrying wasn't his. I had been married to Shinwan for 6 years, pulling his teetering family empire back to its peak. I devoted everything, whether it was resources from my family or my own, selflessly. This was because when Shinwan and I were both in a car accident, he directed all the medical resources to me that day. I was waiting by the roadside for him when his car suddenly lost control and headed straight towards me. I was scraped by the car, hitting the back of my head on the ground. While the car went on to crash into the guardrails, Shinwan saved me first. This incident made my previously indifferent parents agree to our marriage. Before I got married, they said, "We don't ask for you to be extremely wealthy in this life, but the fact that Shinwan chose you between 2 women proves his love." So we got married, but on the day we registered our marriage, Shinwan's beloved passed away. I remember when he received the news, he stood there, stunned. It was then I learned that when I was rushed to the hospital, Shinwan had forced the hospital to use the last 2 bags of panda blood on me. However, he quickly regained his composure, chose to proceed with our marriage registration, and even spent a long time chatting and laughing with my father at our home. From then on, everyone said that Shinwan must have truly loved me, yet, I felt somewhat guilty and resolved to support him and help him. But after enjoying the resources from my family and seeing the Shin family slowly regain their strength, they changed. They began to psychologically manipulate me, making things extremely difficult. Even my parents gradually lost the respect of the Shin family. By the time I realized what was happening, our family had been slowly drained. Later, I was diagnosed with severe depression. On the day I attempted to jump off the building, Shinwan sat on the couch, watching me with a smirk. He said, "Lin Yen, in this life, you've wronged me and Zhou Xan. Even in death, you should go and beg Zhou Xan for forgiveness. Your life was stolen from Zhou Xan. If it weren't for you, Xan would have been able to give birth to our baby soon." Baby. So, he had already been unfaithful. All those talks about meeting for business were lies. Provoked by his words, I jumped. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day of the car accident. I still stood by the roadside, and by the time I realized what was happening, Shinwan's car was already speeding towards me. I couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the car, which fiercely crashed into the guardrails. But this time, Shinwan, dragging his injured legs, pulled Zhou Xan from the passenger seat. He hailed a car from the roadside and rushed to the hospital. He never once looked back at me. It wasn't just me who was reborn, Shinwan was too. Clearly, in this life, he decided to follow his heart and save his true love, and me. Wouldn't Yen have to live with guilt for the rest of her life? I love Yen, which is why I don't want her to bear the burden of a life lost. How absurd. The accident happened in Zhou Xan's car. Why should I be the one to bear the burden? Yet, what's even more ridiculous is that in my past life, I was actually fooled by his words. How can the living argue against the dead, even though Zhou Xan was at a place she shouldn't have been? Her death settled all disputes. Every time I brought up this matter, Shinwan would look at me coldly. "Lin Yen, since Zhou Xan died because of you, must you really quibble with the dead? In my past life, such words suffocated me." Even outsiders would say, "Hey, if it wasn't for your distrust of their innocence, Shinwan wouldn't have driven so fast to find you. Your jealousy killed someone." Remembering these comments, I couldn't help but leave the bedroom. Standing at the top of the stairs on the 2nd floor, I looked down on Shinwan and sneered, "I'm sorry, Mr. Shun, but I think our engagement needs to be called off." Shinwan, ignoring my parents' attempts to stop him, ran up to the 2nd floor. He gripped my arm tightly, unconcerned about the injuries on my body. "Why, Yen, I know you're upset about this, but I did it all for you. If she had died, everyone would point fingers at you." I looked at him as if he was a fool. "Shinwan, if anyone should be pointed at, it should be you. We're engaged, and you bring your first love to race to me. Even if she hadn't died from it, wouldn't it still be because you were driving too fast? What does that have to do with me?" After saying that, I turned and went back to the bedroom. "The dowry will be returned to your family's account. Don't come here again." Even looking at him made me feel sick. This kind of man, who lacks responsibility, always finds a way to pass the blame on to others. After driving Shinwan away, I contacted someone. Although the Shin family has fallen, they are still wealthy. His car wasn't insured after the accident, which gave me the opportunity to have a friend take his dash cam. My friend retrieved the surveillance footage from the day of the accident and sent it to me. The video showed Zhou Xan and Shinwan getting into the car together at 11 a.m., and the scene in front of the car was a 5-star hotel. Seeing this, I laughed. I laughed at Shinwan's lies in my past life, and how foolish I was to be deceived all my life. While I was angry, the video captured their conversation. Wan, will you come back to the hotel with me tonight? Shinwan clicked his tongue, and Zhou Xian giggled and said, stop it, I'd like to, but Lin Yan wants me to have dinner with her. So annoying. If it wasn't for her family's resources, I wouldn't give her a second glance. As they talked, the car's speed noticeably increased. They kept chatting in the car, mostly belittling me. Xian, only you understand the thrill of racing like this. If it were Lin Yan, she'd definitely tell me to slow down, saying it's dangerous. So annoying. Zhou Xian laughed, and after a moment, in a sugary voice, she asked, is that all? How about other aspects? Who's better? Right after she spoke, Shinwan's car crossed the yellow line in the middle of the road. A truck on the opposite side honked, followed by a sharp turn. Damn it. I was seething with anger, hating this deceitful pair to my core. What nerve. Already engaged to me and yet cheating, and not just cheating, but flirting while driving. If they hadn't been distracted by their flirting, the accident might never have happened. Zhou Xian's death in her past life was half due to Shinwan and half due to herself. Poor me, an unrelated victim caught in their mess. I was completely manipulated to my breaking point. I clenched my phone tightly, vowing to see that despicable couple get their comeuppance in this lifetime. After recovering somewhat, I went for a follow-up at the hospital. To avoid running into that detestable pair, I deliberately chose a different hospital. Yet, unexpectedly, I still ran into Shinwan. The moment we met at the clinic's entrance, I couldn't help but roll my eyes at him. I intended to ignore him, but Shinwan called out to me with what he believed was a charming voice, why are you at this hospital? Somewhat speechless, I politely responded, the other hospital feels unlucky. I didn't want to go there. I thought that would anger Shinwan. However, far from being angry, he laughed and, without further ado, grabbed my hand and started walking. Shinwan, I protested as he held on tight, not letting go until we were behind the hospital building, where I finally managed to pull my hand free. Shinwan, are you out of your mind? I told you I want to call off our engagement, and the dowry has been returned, can't you understand? Leaning against the wall with his hands in his pockets, Shinwan looked at me, an inexplicable fondness in his eyes that made my skin crawl. Yen, I know you're jealous. If saying this makes you feel better, then go ahead, but you must reply when I message you. No more antics. Jealous. I laughed in disbelief. After spending 6 years together in a previous life, I never realized just how narcissistic Shinwan could be. Or did he truly believe that in his past life I was hopelessly in love with him? Fine, then explain this. Why was Zhou Xian in your car that day? It was on the way, and I didn't expect anything to happen. On the way? From where? A hotel? I asked mockingly. Hit by the accuracy of my guess, Shinwan's face gradually darkened. He looked at me coldly and said, Lin Yan, I'm giving you a way out. If you don't take it now, you won't have another chance. I looked him over from head to toe. Who needs your way out? You'll regret this. Unbelievable. Running into this jerk even here, who's to say who will regret it in the end? According to a friend, Shinwan has been staying at the hospital with Zhou Xian. Shin's grandfather has been furious about it several times, but Shinwan doesn't seem to care. After my recovery, I started working as an assistant for my father. Dad, the Shin family is still using our name to deceive people. I think we should announce the cancellation of our engagement. My father was all for cutting ties with the Shin family. That very day, I posted on social media, declaring the cancellation of our marriage alliance. That afternoon, both my father's and my phones were ringing off the hook. Lin Yan, what's happening? Are you really not getting married? My friends deserve the truth. After hearing the full story, tisk tisk sounds came through the phone. That's disgusting. I'm going to have my dad stop all collaborations with them. Hearing the last comment, I smirked with satisfaction. I quickly counted. In just one afternoon, the Shin family must have received over a dozen cancellation orders. This was exactly what I wanted to see. After work, my dad and I headed home together. Seeing Shinwan at our doorstep, my dad snorted, daughter, shall we move? Having that filth at our doorstep every day, even the god of wealth wouldn't want to visit. Amused by my dad's serious tone, I ignored Shinwan and headed inside, but as I entered, the proud Shinwan still came over. Shinwan often spent several nights away from home, left with no other choice. I could only visit him at his office. However, I still remember the disdainful look he gave me when he saw me downstairs at his office building. He walked straight past me without stopping. Shinwan, I tried to follow him, but his assistant stopped me. Sorry, it's working hours now. If you want to see President Shin, please make an appointment by phone. How ridiculous. I need an appointment to see my own man. Now isn't it just karma coming back around? Shinwan tugged at the corner of my dress, looking more pitiful than in his previous life. Is there something wrong? Shinwan forced a smile and stiffly nodded. I let my dad go in first while I stayed back to see what trick Shinwan was going to play next. He took a large bunch of roses out of the trunk. Yen, I really know I was wrong. Can we make up? Can you give me another chance? I smiled as I sized him up, finding Shinwan quite amusing for the first time, a grown man, clearly in love yet too scared to fight for it. All grown up, can he do nothing but mooch off others? I tilted my head. What about your Xian? I really have nothing improper with her, I swear. I can swear on the Shin family. He dares to swear. I dare to ensure the Shin family goes bankrupt, just as Shinwan was about to swear. My mom opened the door calling me to eat. Sorry, I'm off to eat. Shinwan took a step forward. What about us? I waved my hand with a smile before closing the door. It depends on my mood. Our family of 3 leisurely enjoyed hot pot around the stove. After eating, my dad secretly gestured to me from the window side. He hasn't left yet. Lin Yen, you can't go soft on him. How could I? I snorted lightly. Probably his family is pressuring him. Has the Shin family contacted you? Contact? My dad proudly said. I blocked them the day the incident happened. An hour later, I opened the front door. Shinwan, shivering from the cold at the doorstep, lit up when he saw me. Yen. You finally forgave. I feigned surprise. Why are you still here? Then I grabbed a trash bag from behind the door. Sorry, I'm just taking out the trash, pretending all night. Shinwan couldn't hold back any longer. His frozen smile slowly disappeared, and his gaze darkened. Right? This is just like the Shinwan from my past life. Lin Yen, are you playing me? After throwing away the trash, I clapped my hands. Yes, what about it? Compared to Shinwan's past actions, this was nothing. Shinwan stared at me for a moment, then spoke deliberately. Lin Yen, you'll regret this. After that, he got into his car. The blinding headlights shone on me as Shinwan stared intensely from inside the car. I didn't flinch as I met his gaze. If he dared to drive over me, then he'd show some real guts. But he didn't dare, just like how he had someone he loved but still sought an arranged marriage with me against his conscience. Shinwan was destined to achieve nothing. Shinwan was probably stimulated by my actions. According to my dad, the Shin family has been very active in their circles lately. Perhaps planning a big move. What can he possibly come up with? My dad laughed heartily, looking at me with a hint of pride. Yen. Why do I feel like you've become a different person after the incident? I was silent for a moment, then played a part of the dashcam recording for my dad, just the nicest parts one had picked, and it nearly made my dad flip the table. That freeloader, as long as I'm here, the Shin family won't be able to turn things around. My dad and the Shin family were now completely at odds. The Shin family was in a state of collapse, and everyone kicked them while they were down. All the hard work Shinwan put in over 3 days, my dad could easily destroy with just one phone call. With my dad handling the business, I had some free time to focus on Zhou Xian. I still remember her making inappropriate jokes about me in the car. Zhou Xian has always been the apple of Shinwan's eye, but I wonder if she feels the same about him. I had someone dig into Zhou Xian's past. When I got the information, I was stunned for a moment. So much, it was about a centimeter thick. My friend looked a bit helpless and said, Sister, you really know how to pick them. This person is notoriously problematic in our circle. You could talk about her for days on end without covering everything. Problematic. I remember what Shinwan said about the child before I jumped off the building in my previous life. My eyelid twitched, sensing an ominous feeling. After reviewing the information, it took me a while to digest it before I spoke up. So, Zhou Xian was already pregnant before she met Shinwan, right? My friend nodded across the table, a trace of sympathy appearing on their face, but remembering what I went through in my past life, I didn't know whether to feel sympathy for him or for myself, for a betrayal. Shinwan tormented me for 6 years, my temples throbbed with anger, and I felt a surge of frustration with nowhere to vent. In this life, I will have my revenge. I found Zhou Xian's last benefactor. I later found out that due to Zhou Xian's interference, this benefactor had been stripped of most of his wealth by his official wife. He was practically left with nothing. Sitting across from him, I silently marveled at Zhou Xian's audacity, balding, with an oily face and a big belly. He was revolting to look at. What can I do for you, miss? He asked, his sleazy gaze making me uncomfortable. You know Zhou Xian, right? I cut him off, slapping a prepared pregnancy test report on the table. Let me tell you the truth. She's carrying your child but doesn't want to trouble you. She's planning to have the baby on her own. If you care at all, you should go find her. And remember, don't tell her I told you this. Zhou Xian wanted it kept secret. After that, I got up and left. The old man called after me several times, but I didn't dare stop. Too sleazy. But as far as I knew, his wife had taken their only daughter with her when they divorced. He currently had no children. And now knowing about this child, I believed he wouldn't ignore it. After leaving the restaurant, I hid in my car and secretly watched him. He scratched his head holding the pregnancy report, calculated the dates, and then chuckled slyly, watching him repeatedly make phone calls. I knew my plan had worked. I couldn't help but laugh. I was already eager to see Shinwan's face when he learned the truth. Shinwan and our family were at odds. My dad said that recently he had been looking everywhere for partnerships but faced rejection at every turn. I bit my lip in thought, then whispered a suggestion to my dad. Dad, will this work? It won't end up benefiting the Shin family, will it? My dad laughed heartily and looked at my mom. Wife, we have a worthy successor in our family. Our daughter is much tougher than me, absolutely ruthless towards our rivals. I grinned, seeing that my parents were truly happy. My parents were loving. And I was their only child. Many people gossiped behind my dad's back. What are you striving for? In the end, it will all go to someone else's family. Even my own grandmother often said we would end up being devoured by others. It seems my dad is now reassured about handing over the company to me. Under my guidance, Shinwan's business gradually began to improve. I made it a point to let everyone know I was going to an art exhibit over the weekend, and it didn't disappoint when I arrived. Jo Xan was there too. Seeing me, she smirked with satisfaction. Ah. Miss Lin is also here to see the exhibit. What a coincidence. I snorted dismissively. Not a coincidence at all. It's more like enemies on a narrow road. Jo Xan probably didn't expect me to be so blunt, and she paused momentarily at my words, but clearly, she wasn't ready to let it go and deliberately glanced behind me. Though, you came alone, Miss Lin, did you know? Ah. Juan is planning to marry me soon. You better hurry up. I hear you're 25 already. If you don't get married soon, no one will want you, right, as if I could compare to you, someone who's wanted. Just then, her sugar daddy was eagerly watching Jo Xan from behind. I smiled and nodded towards him. It seems like that gentleman over there is looking for you. Shinwan instinctively followed my gaze, and his smile instantly stiffened. I tactfully walked away and found a good spot to watch the drama unfold. As soon as the older man approached, Jo Xan lowered her head and walked away. The two of them moved to a less crowded area, where the man puckered up for a kiss, but Jo Xan pushed him away sharply. Shin, what's wrong? Don't you miss me after all this time? It was obvious from her face that Jo Xan was genuinely disgusted. Understandable, no matter how trashy Shinwan was, he at least had a decent appearance. This old man, though, what are you doing, Mr. Zhang? We broke up 3 months ago. Please respect yourself. Jo Xan frowned in his direction, her eyes darting around, afraid of being seen, but it was too late. I had recorded everything. Ah. Baby Xan, stop pretending. I know you're pregnant. Jo Xan's eyes widened as if to say, how did you know? I've already divorced that old lady at home. Come with me, have a baby with me later. Whether it's a boy or a girl, I'll transfer all my properties to our child. How about that? Jo Xan blinked in surprise. Really? The old man pressed on while the iron was hot. I know you're with Shinwan now, but you don't know the real situation of the Shin family, do you? They're barely holding on. You're so beautiful. Why suffer with him? If you don't believe me, I can write a guarantee and get it notarized. Once the baby is born, everything will belong to him. Jo Xan didn't respond. Clearly tempted, she knew about Shinwan's situation, but she knew nothing about this old man's real circumstances. His ex-wife had caught him cheating and took half of his company during the divorce. Now, all he had left was just a shell. The old man smiled and pulled out a room card from his pocket, sliding it into the cleavage of Jo Xan's dress. Think it over, I'll wait for you tonight. This time, Jo Xan didn't refuse. I watched as she tucked the room card into her purse. That evening, I had my dad set up a meeting. Shinwan had always wanted to collaborate with my dad's old friend but had been repeatedly refused. I wanted to see if Jo Xan would really meet that old man tonight. This was the perfect opportunity to find out. When Shinwan saw my dad and me, he was momentarily stunned, but considering my dad's friend was hard to meet, he gritted his teeth and went forward to shake hands. Mr. Chen, hello. It's common for men to discuss business over drinks. Uncle Chin was famously known for his love of drinking. My dad accompanied him at a leisurely pace. I had a soft drink in my glass, while Shinwan grimaced and chugged down one drink after another, watching him drink until his face turned red. I was reminded of our past lives. Back when the Shin family was still prosperous, Shinwan was known as a young master Shin, and he was treated with great respect wherever he went. Drinking for him meant forcing others to drink. Even after his family's decline, he managed to cling to mine. With my father's support, he could secure contracts just by exchanging pleasantries, but drinking like this was a first. I watched indifferently, feeling nothing. If he hadn't tried to scheme against me, and had instead progressed step by step, the Shin family might have returned to its peak. But now, there was no hope left. The meal ended without a signed contract, and Shinwan had thrown up 3 times, reeking of alcohol. After everyone left, my dad and Uncle Chen spoke privately. I went to the restroom, and upon returning, I bumped into a drunken Shinwan at the door. I tried to walk around him, but he blocked me. Lin Yen, his speech was slurred, and he swayed as he stood. Am I impressive? To tell you the truth, the Shin family is on the rise again. I'm giving you a chance now. Apologize to me, make it up to me, and I'll forgive you. I could still marry you. I laughed. Ha! You're laughing. Happy now, Lin Yen? I'll marry you. He staggered, lost his balance, and fell towards me. I dodged in shock, grateful for my quick reaction. In this lifetime, I want nothing to do with Shinwan, having no support. He stumbled and crashed into a wall. I dusted off the spot where he had almost touched me. Shinwan, what makes you think I would marry you? You don't really think I like you, do you? When Shinwan turned around, his eyes were reddened. You like me? I know you do, Lin Yan. You like me. Have you forgotten? His voice trembled as he spoke. I looked at him with a cold smirk. I might have liked you once, but now, I wish you were dead. As I turned to leave, Shinwan grabbed my clothes. He stood there, a tall figure with teary eyes, looking rather like a puppy that had been abandoned. Where's Zhou Xian? Call her to pick you up. I tried calling Zhou Xian using Shinwan's phone but got no answer. I was relieved. She must be having a secret rendezvous with that older man. I tossed the phone back to him and walked away without hesitation. Now, he truly had no one. The next day, I unexpectedly received a thank you red envelope from the older man. Thank you, beautiful lady. I've regained what I lost. Come to our wedding when it happens. The red envelope contained 10,000 yuan. Those two really ended up together, but Zhou Xian really had her work cut out for her, managing her time like a pro. I inquired about Shinwan's business, which, although not as good as before, had improved considerably. At least, Shinwan had begun to regain his arrogance. Figuring it was about time, I registered a new account and added the older man's ex-wife. I exaggerated the details, mentioning other properties under the old man's name, supposedly all destined for his mistress's child. I just lightly stirred things up. The fire across instantly erupted into flames. That afternoon, I went to Zhou Xian's place to stake out. About an hour later, the old man's ex-wife showed up with a crew in tow. The door was answered by Shinwan, carrying himself with the air of a domineering CEO. He scowled and asked, "Who are you looking for?" The ex-wife, clearly not someone to be trifled with, didn't waste a word and had her people push past Shinwan to burst inside. Minutes later, Zhou Xian was dragged out, screaming at the top of her lungs, "What kind of people are you? Breaking into homes in broad daylight? I'm calling the police. You're breaking the law." As soon as she mentioned the law, the ex-wife slapped her across the face, left and right. "Breaking the law? I'm breaking the law by hitting you, but you being a homewrecker and destroying families isn't illegal." The accusation of being a mistress also confused Shinwan. Still, he didn't hesitate to shield Zhou Xian behind him. "Ma'am, you must have mistaken her for someone else. This is my girlfriend, and we're about to get married. She's not the mistress you're talking about, so leave now." Zhou Xian, upon seeing this woman, seemed as frightened as a mouse seeing a cat. Apparently, she had been frightened by a previous encounter. Now, she clung to Shinwan like he was her last lifeline. "Wan, hurry up and call the police." The woman blinked and then suddenly smiled. "Wan, you wouldn't happen to be from the Shin family, would you?" Shinwan straightened his back a bit, thinking the Shin family name still carried some weight. However, he didn't expect the woman to dismissively wave her hand and command, "Beat him to a pulp." Shinwan, outmatched and outnumbered, couldn't fight them off, but he kept Zhou Xian close, taking most of the blows himself. The commotion was too loud, and the police arrived within 10 minutes. I don't know exactly what happened at the police station, but the old man's ex-wife kept referring to Zhou Xian as the mistress, officer. "I know it's wrong to hit someone, but did you know she's destroying my family? She's pregnant now, and she wants the father of my child to give all his wealth to her illegitimate child. How can I not be angry?" Zhou Xian, clearly in the wrong, could only cry. Meanwhile, Shinwan, still grim-faced, was on the phone with a lawyer and told the woman to watch her language, but the woman scoffed. "I see you've been fooled by this vixen too, still getting married, marrying someone like her. Aren't you afraid it'll dirty you?" Shinwan's face was so dark it looked like it could drip ink. I sat in the car eating popcorn, thoroughly enjoying the drama. The only regret was that I didn't witness the scene at the police station. I only know that half an hour later, the old man rushed over in a frenzy. Soon after, the police escorted a few people to the hospital. I silently followed behind, keen on keeping up with the drama. I guess it was a case of each party sticking to their story, and the police, out of options, had them go for a paternity test. But during the paternity test, Zhou Xian was very uncooperative. Hiding behind Shinwan, she pleaded, "Wan, don't you trust me? I don't want to do this. I don't even know them. This is all a misunderstanding. Let's just go home, okay? My head is so dizzy." Unseen by Shinwan, Zhou Xian kept making desperate eye signals to the old man, but the old man didn't catch on and became even more agitated. "Zhou Xian, what are you trying to do? You need to let my son acknowledge his ancestors." At this, Shinwan clenched his fists. "Brother, don't blame me for being unkind, but the child in her womb is mine, and I can't just hand over my child to you, can I? Besides, Zhou Xian, you and I were at a hotel just the other days. Both of us unmarried. What are you afraid to admit now? Seeing you like this, who knew we had to do a paternity test to find out who the child really belonged to?" After a few words, Shinwan's chest heaved violently. He gritted his teeth and looked at Zhou Xian. Is what he said true or false? Zhou Xian's body trembled slightly. "Ah." Wan, I get a paternity test done for me, Shinwan roared. The commotion was huge, and the onlookers crowded around, making it impossible for the police to disperse the crowd. In the end, the paternity test was conducted. With the police present, the results came out quickly. When the nurse called Zhou Xayan's name, her body stiffened. Shinwan and the older man exchanged glances and walked over together. I craned my neck to join the spectators, eager to know who the father of the child was. The smile on the old man's face gradually froze. Was it really Shinwan's child? But Shinwan's expression seemed off too. After exchanging looks, Shinwan turned and strode rapidly towards Zhou Xayan. Under everyone's gaze, Shinwan actually grabbed Zhou Xayan by the neck. Zhou Xayan, what else are you hiding from me? Who is the child's father really? The police quickly rescued Zhou Xayan from Shinwan's grasp. Everyone looked at each other in disbelief. Could it be that the child's father was someone else entirely? This incident somehow got uploaded online by a concerned citizen. Suddenly, everyone was aware of the hospital's mix-up. Netizens made light of the situation. Seriously, is it such a big deal? Exactly, neither of you are the child's biological father. Why the rush when even the real father isn't panicking? It's like watching a comedy show during the Chinese New Year. Shinwan, can't you just focus on being a boss? Must you complicate love? I laughed out loud. I heard that Zhou Xayan was thrown out of the house by Shinwan that very night. Shinwan was dejected for a long time. It was only half a month later that he reappeared at the company. It seemed like he was struck by love and decided to dedicate himself fully to his career. Due to the hospital incident, everyone felt that Shinwan was truly unfortunate. Despite everything, he managed to gain a bit of a positive reputation online. Perhaps now he wanted to seize the opportunity to excel in his career, but had he forgotten, fortune does not double, and trouble does not come singly. That day, I released the conversation recorded by my dashcam online. This conversation stirred another uproar on the internet. Shinwan, I take back my sympathy. You truly deserve it. To ditch a genuine rich beauty for a mistress, you've got some nerve. What goes around comes around. Isn't this just poetic justice? Following this, internal turmoil arose within the Shin Corporation. Companies that had been instructed by my father to collaborate with Shin Corporation began demanding to terminate their partnerships. And since Shin Corporation was the first to falter, they were required to pay 3 times the penalty according to the contract. Shinwan thought he had seized an opportunity, but now he was facing bankruptcy due to the penalties. From behind my phone, I orchestrated everything, feeling immensely satisfied. Shinwan, everything you did to me in our past life, I've returned it all. Shin Corporation really went bankrupt. My father considered acquiring it, but I really despised the bad luck. Shinwan was burdened with huge debts and was reportedly hiding from creditors everywhere. As for Zhou Xayan, due to her role as the other woman, she was ostracized by society. She was no longer welcome in high society circles. Anyone who went online knew of her glorious deeds, and she couldn't even get a job as a sanitation worker. When I saw Shinwan again, it was during a night out at a bar with my best friend. He had become a male model. When I saw him at the next table, I was utterly shocked. As we made eye contact, several older wealthy women were pouring red wine on his muscles. It was too bizarre. I couldn't stand it and decided to switch bars. As I was leaving, Shinwan followed me out. Lin Yen, can we talk? I'm sorry for what happened before. Which incident are you referring to? I looked at him. He had wronged me in too many ways, but I didn't need his apology. After all, I had already avenged all the wrongs by myself. About the car accident, I should have saved you first. I waved my hands as if facing a great disaster. No, please don't. As long as you're saved, my life is worse than death. Before leaving, I asked him, Shinwan, do you believe in reincarnation? Shinwan understood, his face turning deathly pale. Lin Yen, you too. I ignored him and just walked away. Let him figure out the rest on his own. After all, he shouldn't expect to live well in this lifetime.